What's good? I'm Lemur Robot, one of the devs working on Bladeless, a Metroidvania where every ability revolves around parrying. Throughout my years of developing small games, I've always been inspired by one thing: procedural animation. Procedural animation is a method that uses math to make movement more fluid. It has been used since the dawn of video games, and can save coders a ton of time that would otherwise be spent on constantly drawing complex objects. Games use procedural animation in many ways, such as inverse kinematics. Titles that use procedural animation include Silksong, Terraria, and Rain World. For Bladeless, I'm adding cloth physics to function as a 2D cape. But if it's so useful and good looking, then what's... Put simply, Godot doesn't have a built-in softbody 2D node. What would that be? Softbodies are clouds of vertices that have relationships with distances to other vertices in the cloud. Often, a texture will be added on top of the cloud to make it visible to the player. My first idea was to see if someone had already made a node for what I needed. Often in coding, someone else has already solved most of the problems you will encounter, in a better way than your solution will solve the issue. And so I checked the web, and there it was. Softbody 2D library. I happily downloaded it and tested it out, and it worked.
But if it worked, then why isn't the video almost over?
To my dismay, the softbody had to be set up manually. Can you imagine individually creating 64 plus nodes and connecting them with two-way relationships manually? In addition, the softbody code didn't have an option to reduce pushback. When working with softbodies, each vertex can be pulled into place when it gets too far from its neighbors, or pushed into place when it gets too close to its neighbors. This is great for squishy objects that pop back into place when no pressure is applied, but for cloth physics, the nodes should only be pulled into place. Therefore, I had to come up with my own solution. First, I had to come up with a method for rendering the softbody so that the texture would stretch accordingly to the position of all the vertices. For 3 days, I struggled to find a solution to this dreadful problem. I searched everywhere, from the official Godot documentation to communities of developers on Discord, but I could find no solution. And as I relentlessly searched, I could feel the burnout reaching its skeletal hand towards me. To my surprise, someone had found the actual solution to my problem. I could use a mesh 2D with each of the vertices on the mesh being one of the points on the softbody. The only issue? I suck at coding. So for a couple days, I scraped through my code looking for what was causing the endless crashes, load failures, and graphical errors. After ages of coding, it finally worked, except for the fact that it didn't. The cape would often completely glitch out, affecting the whole screen. The edges of the cape would also sometimes get caught on the sides of walls and the ground. It wasn't looking good for us. That is, until PK Head joined our team. PK is a much better coder than me, and he was able to get the program back on its feet using the actual laws of physics. So let's give this guy a chance to speak. Hello? Yo, where?
Lemur's implementation was fairly solid from what I saw, I think. Well, there was the problem of the cloth getting snagged on the terrain, which he informed me of before I opened the project. I think he missed out a crucial detail in his description though. So yeah, the way the softbody works is that the object is split into an interconnected net of vertices. And the simulation works by enforcing a constraint. The distance between each vertex should be less than a certain value. This is satisfied by continually applying a force pushing each vertex towards each other, with a magnitude proportional to the displacement from rest, i.e. Hooke's law. So, obviously, over time, and ignoring negative displacement, this would converge the distance between each vertex to be less than the resting distance, thus satisfying the constraint. But, from seeing the explosion glitch caused by getting snagged on the terrain, I realized that there was a problem. If naively you only applied this accumulating force, Eventually the two vertices will meet, but they still have velocity at the point that they do meet. Thus it will overshoot and eventually end up in the same place it started in. There is no loss of energy in the simulation, so without any external forces, it will oscillate endlessly. But then, if you were to hypothetically add an external force to the simulation, like perhaps the influence from other vertices in the soft body, or the player moving, or the fact that it's snagged on terrain and much further away from the player than reasonable, I don't think it would be difficult to see how the vertices would catastrophically overshoot. Well, I think that's what the problem was anyway. I'm not actually sure. You see, often in coding, you have to read someone else's code, and sometimes it is more difficult than reading your own. So, as any reasonable, self-respecting, challenge-seeking programmer would do, I was silly to understand his code to figure out what was wrong with it, so I threw out the entire thing and decided to remake it from scratch. To be fair, his code was pretty messy, and had barely any comments. Oh, and also because I wanted to track the player's movement path and try to program the cape vertices to explicitly follow it. Theoretically, this would make the cape look better when you move in a curve, like if you jump backwards to dodge or something. I don't know why I'm telling you this, because I ended up scrapping that. I couldn't figure out how to get it to work alongside the soft body simulation. But if I did get it to work, then it probably would have looked cool. Anyway, my rewrite added two improvements to the cloth physics. The first, and probably the most important, is that it dampens the velocity of the vertices. This is done by applying an additional force to the vertex that is negatively linearly proportional to its velocity, which significantly remediates the hypothetical overshooting problem. My second, also important improvement is that there's a hard distance limit that is enforced. It is a bit higher than the rest position to give it some leeway. This prevents the cape from stretching too much when the player is moving fast or falling, and also pretty much makes the cape unable to get stuck on terrain, since it would inevitably get yanked out of the predicament, whether it likes it or not. My third improvement is that the vertices push each other when they are too close. I know Lemur didn't want to use that soft body library specifically because he didn't want pushback, but I think the cape actually looks slightly better with this adjustment. On an unrelated note, off by one error is one of the few hard problems in computer science. So yeah, I think my rewrite turned out well. Lemur seems to like it. And admittedly, with my changes, the character did feel more aurorous. Wow, I'm just coined a new word.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe. Subscribing helps us get noticed by the algorithm and reach a wider audience, letting more people see our game. Thanks for watching, and catch you in the next one.
I know Lemur didn't want to use that soft body library specifically because he didn't want pushback, but I think the cape actually looks slightly better with this adjustment. I know Lemur didn't want to use that soft body library.